So thank you all for coming here. I recognize quite a few faces and some people who've been on the weekends. And just to give you an idea how I got involved in this, do any of you recognize that equation? Well, that's like trying to explain to anyone what codependency is about. So I'm going to try this evening to give you some insight that I've been so blessed to be able to experience and train and treat with myself. I always have a handout that you've got there, and it's mainly because when I was in that time of recovery, when I was running all over the world to do workshops and find out more about this disorder that I suffered from, one of the classic things for me as a codependent, I was terrified I'd miss anything. And it had to be perfect. So I was sitting there with books, taking notes. So hopefully you can concentrate on this and not have to take notes like I drove myself nuts doing it. You know what I'm talking about, eh? It's not to shame you. It's to try and help you, because I missed a lot of stuff. I was so busy writing, I wanted to say, excuse me, what did you say? And can you go slower, because I can't write quick enough? Classic signs of my codependency. Huh? So how did I get into this stuff? Well, I ended up in treatment in 1988. I went into treatment. I'd been into psychiatric hospitals 4 times before for nervous breakdowns. So the psychiatrist told me. Of course, I never told him what was going on in my life because I couldn't. And there came a time when I knew I had to do something about the excessive use of Valium that I had a habit of. So the psychiatrist said to me, well, we got you again. We're going to take you in and for 2 weeks, detox you, and then you're going to work for me. Let me just check with my wife how much money we need for the next holiday, and I'll know how long you're going to have to work with me, because I was paying him privately. Huh? So he wanted to take me into the Priory, Roehampton, where he used to take me into and where he had a good relationship, and I know now he was getting an introductory fee and his kickback. And I lived in North London and said at that time, I don't want to go down there, it's too far, let me go somewhere nearer. And I ended up at the Charter Nightingale in Abbey Road. But it took him a week to organize his arrangements there. So I went in there expecting to detox off the Valium and work with him. I'm such a bad boy, I've done it again. And a counselor came to see me a couple of hours after I'd checked into the Charter to tell me about the ADU they had on the next floor, Addiction Disease Unit. This was in 1988. Huh? They didn't call it treatment in those days. And of course, I was Mr. Nice Guy, so I let him rabble on and said, I'll let you know. But he was a smart guy, because that evening he sent down 2 beautiful young women who were in treatment. And it was like, hey, well, yeah, okay. So I decided to try it. And although I knew I had a problem with Valium, I couldn't tell them my excessive use of cocaine, my drinking, which until then I didn't think I had a problem with, 2 bottles of wine a day and probably at least a bottle and a half of whiskey a day, I didn't think was a problem. And they laid on taxis in the evenings to take us to 12-step fellowships. I went to them to please the counselors. Codependent. Codependency, there's a list of possible symptoms of codependency, is I don't know what I need to do. I need you to tell me what I need to do. I need to please you. I don't know how to please me, I'll please you. So I went to these meetings, and on the second meeting I went to, an AA meeting, the guy doing the share told my story. And I was so paranoid, I thought the clinic had sent my notes. I went to speak to him afterwards, and it took a bit of time for me to realize we didn't drink or drug the same. It was the feelings that he was talking about, that absolute despair I used to feel. That's what I was identifying with. And the light went on. So here I am in 12-step recovery. I'm off drugs. I'm off alcohol. I got rid of the psychiatrist eventually. I refused to see him anymore. And I'm out and I'm doing an average of 23 meetings a week. I'm living down in London and thankfully they were there. That meant on some weeks I was doing 27 or 28 to get an average of 23. I was running a business and still had a family. That's how insane I was. And 8 months later, I was sitting in a showroom of a client. I was in the fashion textile business. He had basement showroom, and we were busy working on a contract he had with me. And I put my hand in my pocket to bring out my smokes. And he said, "Peter, please don't smoke. There's no air here." And out of my mouth came, "You know what? I'm not going to smoke again." Put them down. This was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I didn't smoke for the rest of the day. And the next morning I woke up and I felt great. And I didn't smoke that day. And the next day. And this spiritual giant, by that time, had it sussed. On the Tuesday evening, I came home to get myself ready to go to the meeting I told you about where the guy told my story. It was a Tuesday evening. And I'm coming out of my house and someone had parked his car across my driveway. And I couldn't get out. And God forbid I'm late for my meeting, because at that time I'd taken the meeting over. I was secretary, treasurer, tea maker, and I'd be there early so that I could line the chairs up. They were all in the right. Insane. Someone had parked his car and I couldn't get out. So I opened my car and put my hand on the horn, the hooter. He was just delivering a parcel next door in a minute or two. And he came out and I said something and he said something. And he got in his car and drove off. And I'd opened the boot of my car, taken out a golf club. And I was running down the road, screaming and shaking this golf club. And I stopped. And I was shaking and I started sobbing. And I didn't know what was happening. I was terrified. I didn't know. And nobody in 12-step recovery, and I'm probably the most grateful person in this world for 12-step recovery, because if I didn't go there and it didn't help me stop hurting myself, I wouldn't be here today. But I went and got some professional help. And the stuff we're going to do tonight wasn't available in the UK at that time. If it was very underground. No one was talking about it. It was go to meetings, get a sponsor, help another. Nobody was talking about this craziness that I was going through. So very early on in professional help, it's too long a story. I ended up, all the feelings, I didn't know that nicotine was such a strong drug. I'd been smoking for 39 years. It had been keeping, this drug had been keeping the last bit of those stuffed feelings down. And they started coming up. Man, I cried for 3.5 years. I just couldn't stop. I'd have to pull my car over on the motorway because I couldn't see I was crying so much. And because I couldn't get what I was needing here, I kept running to the States. And I met some lovely, lovely people there. Some of them are still mentors of mine now. I keep in touch with them. One couple, John and Linda Friel, helped me so much in the beginning of my recovery, and they still in touch with them regularly. Their model is the iceberg model. I don't know if any of you have heard it, to illustrate the disorder. It's, you know an iceberg? There's the sea level. And above the sea level are all these little peaks. You've got a copy of it in your notes. And they've labeled them, but you can label them any way you like. It's a very individual thing. I've just got here alcohol, drugs, eating disorders, gambling, nicotine, depression, self-harm, relationships, work addiction, exercise addiction, sex addiction, you name it. There's over 300 12-step fellowships in the States. So I've told you how I came in recovery. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a drug addict, and I'm a nicotine addict. So I'd go into an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and I'd introduce myself as, this is over 25 years ago. Huh? My name's Peter, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. Oh, sorry, this is for alcoholics. If you have a problem with drugs, please go to Narcotics Anonymous. So I'd go to Narcotics Anonymous. My name's Peter, I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. Come on, alcoholics is confusing, huh? So what am I suffering from? What am I suffering from? The alcohol, the drugs, the nicotine, the depression, because I describe myself as using all that stuff in an attempt to medicate the underlying depression. Underneath it all, as you're probably all aware with an iceberg, this is not the danger, because you can see that. You can bypass it. You can stop. This is what everyone sees. He's got a problem with alcohol. The danger with an iceberg is this here. The underlying stuff that you don't see. And the frills, the first thing to deal with, dependency, D-E-N-C-Y, codependency. So I bet you all of you have heard the word codependency, and you probably all have an understanding of it that's individual to you. And every time I ask the question, I generally get back, it's somebody who's in relationships with somebody who has problems. Al-Anons, codependence. The best definition I ever heard of codependency was John Bradshaw, who says a codependent has spent all their life outside of themselves. There's another brilliant one here by a woman by the name of Patricia O'Gorman, if I can find it. Codependency is a type of attachment to another person, organization, or a cause in which we place a greater value or priority on his or her needs than we do on our own. The reason why we learn to attach in this particular way often begins very early in life. As young children, we need to attach to survive. Our vulnerability creates a situation where we need to be able to depend on those around us, so we attach to others, even if there are problems with how the caregiver can give us what we need. If my dad's a drug addict, he's not going to be able to give me what I need, but I don't know that. When we attach to a caregiver whose caring is unpredictable or unreliable, we attach in a manner that is less than ideal for our future development. It goes on there. So how do children survive in this? I know how I survived. I cut off. I stopped feeling. I didn't know I was doing it. The memory that I've had come up since I've been doing this work, I was a little guy and I was lying on my stomach on the living room floor, and my older brother and my father were lying on top of me, and I couldn't breathe, and they wouldn't get up until I surrendered. And I remember saying to myself internally, I'll never let them know it hurts. And I remember that feeling of like floating. I'd left. I couldn't feel it anymore. And they gave up eventually and got off. But I remember thinking like, wow, look at that, I'm so good, hey? I didn't give in. I didn't know that I'd left. I described myself from then onwards in my life as being a zombie. Nobody would ever be able to hurt me again, Nobody could hurt me again. I knew how to leave. Terrible. I didn't know that. It was normal for me. I hear in 12-step fellowships how people quite often say, I just wanted to be normal. Normal for me was being there. That was normal for me. I had to stop. I had to come back in my body. It was really, really painful. I was a very high achiever, perfectionist, workaholic, earning big bucks, driving very exotic cars, flying around the world first class and all that garbage. And I didn't know that that's what I was using to define myself. You know, I must be okay. I learned to put on those masks. Nobody would hurt me. And how did I keep those masks on? Using all these things. You see, when I stopped smoking and those feelings, that rage actually started to come up, 6 weeks later, I'd put on 42 pounds. I'd gone from a 32-inch waist to a 38-inch waist, and it was still growing. It was the most painful bottom I'd hit. And do you know why? Because I was feeling it. The others, I didn't feel anything. And I didn't know how to stop it. I had to go to Overeaters Anonymous, 6.5 years. And it was safe for me because it was safe to cry there. In the meetings that I was going to in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a great fan of Alcoholics Anonymous, it wasn't safe for me to sit there and cry. I'd be judged as full of self-pity, and I wasn't. I was in such pain. So, where did I want to go from here? The next model that I've come up with is, how did this disorder develop? Well, a miracle happens. Can you see there? Yeah? A miracle happens. 2 cells get together, and I'm conceived. That's a miracle. And I'm meant to be heading out to become the person I was always meant to be. There I am. Big smile on my face, happy, joyous, and free, and something happened. Quite a few things happened, but something happened. I've told you about one of them, about lying on the floor. More and more memories have come back since. And this is supposed to be the intended journey. What happens over here is, because I can't deal with it, I call this the lost journey. I start going downwards. Loss of self, loss of what my needs are, not knowing who I am. What do? I'm looking outside for, what should I eat? How should I dress? Who should I be with? Do you know, I know now that I had an arranged marriage. They didn't organize it for me, but by the way they spoke, and I'm okay with my parents, I knew when that template that they put in here for me, by what they said about everyone else, it wasn't just them, it was the society I mixed in. When it was there it is. Everybody will be happy now. Are you happy, Peter? I don't know. I call this the lost journey. And if you're lucky, and I was one of the lucky ones, I guess all of us are lucky because we're here, I hit a rock bottom. And it's very individual, the rock bottom. We've all hit them. And the journey back starts. It might be start going to meetings, 12-step meetings, smart meetings, go therapy, group meetings, and it takes time. Find some work, find somewhere to live, get some, sign on the benefits, or find a job, or whatever. And I come back to the original wound. You with me? Have you heard the term adult child? That's where that comes from. Physically, I was in my late 40s. Emotionally, I was a child. I was at the emotional stage when I cut off. Creates havoc, And most people in 12-step recovery, whatever fellowship you go to, stay there. most. And more stayed there before, but more and more moving out because we've got more and more information now. If you're a believer in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the first one, it says, ask God and more will be revealed. Tons of stuff is being revealed. Most people I've known that stayed there, did service, went to meetings, helped newcomers, sponsored people, went to intergroup. They're lost, but not forever. One of the reasons I do this work is, if you go to meetings, and I think some of you do, first year of recovery, yay, birthday cakes, oh, well done. Second year, yay. Fifth year, well done. 10th year, well done. 15, no one even knows because you're not there anymore. What's happened to them? Do you know I was in treatment with 12? There were 12 of us. I'm the only one who's made it long term. There were 3 suicides. Because hanging around there is not going to last. Not because you're doing the wrong thing, because all the stuff that's underneath the codependency is bubbling up. It needs to be dealt with. The big step is this one here. This is the intended journey. To become the person I was always meant to be. I'm not that fantastic textile salesperson. I'm not that smart guy driving Porsches and wearing tailor-made. I'm not. I never was meant to be. Now, it looks simple. This was my hardest. Because I wanted my therapist to come with me. I wanted the few people I had at that time as support in my group to come with me. They didn't. This is not their journey. It's my journey. You with me? It's my journey. I'm probably going to use this whole flip chart. This was me over here, And I was supposed to step across here to go on my journey. This place didn't work for me anymore. But I came here with this big backpack. It was very heavy. I had lots of grief to deal with. I had unbelievable fear to deal with. You with me? And I had, well, I won't call it anger, I had dreadful rage to deal with. All very emotional, heavy stuff that was weighing me down. I had to get rid of that. Now, we run a weekend workshop, an intensive called What Next? And we give suggestions on how to deal with the stuff. We can't do it here, we just haven't got time to deal with it. Because if I try and step across there and I'm still carrying this garbage, dangerous. Very dangerous. The other one I do is being in 12-step recovery and doing all that stuff that I put when you got to the original route is great. But it's just playing in the foothills, getting ready to go up the mountain. Because that's where I'm heading. I'm heading up there. And if I try and go up there when I'm not ready, man, it's really dangerous stuff. Now, I've had some people really, I've had to have them taken in for, just to stabilize them, because they try to go there too early. So how did this all come about? How did we get to know about this thing called codependency? Well, it started on the west coast of the States, and the Americans are pretty far ahead of us. They were the ones where Alcoholics Anonymous started. So, give them credit. They are a pain in the arse sometimes, but hey, give them credit. So, at the time, in the 80s, the medical insurance companies in the States were paying for people to go into treatment. So busloads were rolling up at these facilities with people going into treatment. Mainly parents bringing their adolescent kids in. This kid's destroying the family. Fix him. So the kid would go in, and slowly he would start to come back into his body, start to settle down, stabilize, start to be okay in group therapy, start crying, start learning to trust a bit, start mixing with the other kids. And he'd be clean for 30 days, 40 days. And they'd have a little meeting, and okay, he's ready now to go back. Back where? Back into the original homestead. Sibling rivalry. Dad's a raving drug addict. Mom's running around screwing with everybody. Nobody's got time for the kids. The kids were using that stuff as a way to survive. So within a short while, they're back in treatment. And the success rate in these facilities was zero. And a lot of well-meaning and very codependent therapists, because most of them are, got together to, what is going on here? And they realized that they were sending them back there where they were bound to use again. So they started developing family programs. Now, I trained in 1995 in a facility called Sierra Tucson. At the time, it was the whiz kid place to go. It was a public company. And I trained with a guy by the name of Jerry Moe. He developed and ran the children's program in the facility. And their policy was, if you went in there for treatment, you signed a contract. You would go in, and the family would come in for a week's family therapy. And within the family therapy week, the children had their own program. Because by then, the children had learned to shut down. His mentor is somebody by the name of Sharon Wegscheider Cruz. She's been doing this for years. Her book called Another Chance, they refused to publish for 2 years because they were terrified of causing problem amongst the professionals talking about this stuff. She reckons it takes 3 generations for this disorder to leave the family. You know, I passed it on to my children. Did I do it intentionally? No. Am I accountable? Yeah. I passed it on. My parents didn't get together one day and say, you know, we're going to screw up our children. But they did. I had an older brother who was a workaholic. He was the hero. I'll come on to family systems. He was the hero in the family. I think I'll give you more information about this one. What happened with my dad, he was orphaned when he was 9. And he was brought up in dire poverty and violence. You know, so I know now he had to shut down, you know, and survive. So when he got to an age where he was out there trying to fight and find himself in the world, emotionally, he was a half a person. Emotionally. If he had been a well person, he would have been like that, fully functioning, okay person. And he goes out into the world and he doesn't know, subconsciously he's putting out these little feelers. I want to find her. And he does. There she is, Mom. He found her, I found mine. And they get together. But they're not. They are one. They are one. I don't know what you need. Sorry, I don't know what I need. I know what you need. I don't know what your problem is, but I'll fix it for you. What do I need? I don't know. All right? You getting, up with me up to now? In a healthy person will find somebody as healthy as him. Because nobody would go anywhere near a half a person. You've seen them. One of my two lovely friends here came up with a lovely equation. Which I'd like to patent, but it's theirs. It's this plus this equals this. However, this plus this equals, says it all, huh? Doesn't that say it all? Have you heard of family systems in childhood roles? No? Okay. This was first developed by a woman called Virginia Satir. And she talks about family systems. Family systems, like my family system, John Bradshaw refers to it in, do you know the mobiles they put on children's prams? You know those things with things dangling on, and they balance so everything dangles and keeps the child amused. This was my family, huh? And it's all stabilized there. There's Dad and Mom, and there's my brother, there's me, and there's my sister. And we're all playing our roles to keep this family balanced. So that everything seems in order. So much energy and wasted space goes into keeping this looking okay. I describe my family as a looking good family. The house was painted annually on the outside. We had a permanent gardener. 2-car family. My dad was an amateur comedian on stage. He would do benefit concerts. The role he learned to play in, coming out of that dreadful childhood he had, was to become a comedian. It's one of the things I noticed in Scotland, more than I was doing this work down in England, is that the Scots laugh rather than feel that pain. You hear dreadful stories and people laughing about it. I've heard stuff, I just can't believe they're laughing, but I know it's a way of not dealing with it. So people used to say to me, "He's your dad, you're so lucky." I was scared to go home. He was a rageaholic and a violent man. My mother was a charityaholic and a committeeaholic. She was never at home for the kids. They didn't call it then, I was a latchkey kid. I used to bunk off school for 3 weeks and no one knew. I used to write my own notes. No one knew. That's how much attention they paid to me. So on this page over here, my parents got together. This half and this half got together, and we're gonna have, I come from a Jewish family, a boy. It's a blessing. Oh, my late brother arrived. Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Our luck is changing. Can you all hear me at the back now? Yeah? Our luck is changing. Now, after a while, let's go for the girl. Yeah? I arrived. Do you know, they didn't tell me I was unwanted, but I knew. Yeah? I knew something was wrong then. I didn't know what it was. It's only since doing this work I know I wasn't wanted. Do you know, my father used to have an outburst and beat the shit out of me and whatever. And my mother would say to me, "He can't help it. He really loves you." That was a big lie. But you know how that screwed with me about what love is? You got to beat me up emotionally or physically, and then you love me. And that's set in here by the age of 2. Huh? If you read The Road Less Traveled, you'll find it. 2 years old, set. Actually, I've got a thing here that I made up to hopefully show it even better. It's a beret with little dangles. But this was my family. I'm the red one, my brother's the purple, my dad's there, and my mom's here, and here's my sister. So here we are, in balance. Because it won't survive in a vacuum. We're all in balance. Everybody's playing their role. My dad was, is that my dad? No. My dad was terribly depressed. In the 50s, he went for help. They shot electricity through his brains, put him into a hospital for 3 months, and got him addicted to tranquilizers. My dad was a drug addict. Where's he? There he is. There was my mom, Miss Victim. Charityaholic. Look what the world's done to me. Where was my brother? There's my brother. He's the hero. There's me, the unwanted child, and then comes the princess. She was the mascot. What my mother did was she had a really dreadful, their relationship was dreadful. I mean, who would want to live with somebody who was so violent and verbal and up and down and mood swings? So she captured me as a surrogate partner. Technically, it's called emotional incest. I was her favorite. I used to beg her to divorce my father and take us with. So, comes the time now, and I'm lucky enough to get into recovery. There you go, Peter. Step off that model there. Look what happens. Chaos. Absolute chaos. I hear so often people in recovery, I just want to get my family back. I just want to be with my family still. That's why family therapy. For me to go back there without family being in recovery, it's just a matter of time before I hurt myself again. And this is not about blaming, This whole process of healing process has got nothing to do with blaming. I know my parents did the best they could with the tools they had. But you know what was done to them, It took me 19 years with my dad to, God, what happened to him in his childhood? It's a multi-generational disorder. Multi-generational disorder. It has nothing to do with the substances being the problem. The substances were the solution. They were the solution. And there's many symptoms. It doesn't have to be symptoms. It could be behaviors. I mean, I was a workaholic. For me, when I went into food recovery, I became an exercise addict. I got a personal trainer who was training me for a triathlon, this nutcase. Aye. And every day I'd have to stop at Lily White's on my way home and buy another outfit to go running in or cycling in, or just nuts. Absolutely nuts. And unfortunately, my support group at the time was saying, "Oh, you're doing so well." Oh, unfortunately, a lot of them didn't make it. Really sadly, didn't make it. So the basis of this disorder is something they call shame. And I've read a lot up on shame, and I've always found it difficult to try and describe what shame is. Shame is a healthy emotion. The stuff I'm talking about here is toxic shame. Shame is a feeling I have that helps me set limits. It'll let me know how far I can go. Boundaries are as far as I'll let you come, but limits are as far as I can healthily go. To be able to do that, I need to be able to feel shame. If I've stepped over your boundary, I will feel shame. Healthy shame. It just limits me. Toxic shame, I just recently read some of this stuff. Just one thing here I marked. Public humiliation creates a far deeper wound than does the very same action done entirely in private. Who has not at some time been laughed at by a group of one's peers? Remember how humiliating this felt? To have a mother shame us is one thing, but to do so directly in the presence of our friends is another. Not only have we lost dignity in our own eyes, but also in the eyes of those friends as well. That sort of described to me exactly. I felt like, oh, you know, if I'm doing it in private, you know, if others know that deep inside me, oh, that's the nature of the disorder. That's what I will use to cover up all that stuff, to not let you know who I am. With all my faults, I snore, I pass wind, I get angry. That's who I am. I'm a human being. I remember Pia Melody on one of her workshops I was doing. She runs the codependency program at the Meadows in Wickenburg. She said, when you can walk into the toilet after your partner's been there and smell and not be disgusted, you'll realize that you're a human being. And I thought, how could she say that? My shame. That's my shame. And I think I'll close this one. Do you know, as parents in our society today, because we're the lucky ones, according to John Bradshaw, who unfortunately passed away just very recently. He was one of the first guys to come out with this stuff. Really good stuff. He reckons that only 5% of the population in America, because he was writing about the States, but I reckon it's the same here, 5% are reasonably emotionally well. Do you know, that just got me so depressed until I realized, like in Scotland, that means there are 300,000. I've met quite a few, you know? But John Friel, God, I used a lot of these, huh? John Friel does it on a bell curve. John Friel reckons 2.5% will have to be institutionalized or medicated for the rest of their lives. It's just what it is. On the other side, 2.5% are reasonably emotionally well. We probably won't see them. They'll be living up somewhere in the highlands somewhere, growing their own food, taking care of the environment, home teaching their children. I don't know if they're doing it. I'm just coming up with some possibles. The rest of us are in here. You know, none of us are perfect, but we've fit in there somewhere. Now, I did this presentation in Perth Prison. They have a recovery cafe there. They've got 7 or 8 guys in recovery, really great, they're doing well. And I did this bell curve, and one of the guys in there, he was quite new into the program, but unfortunately he was still on medication. So, you know, obviously he wasn't getting into his body yet. And I don't know how it came about, but Richard Branson's name came up. Somebody asked me, oh, Richard Branson. I said, yeah, he's probably around here somewhere. Because his achievements will never be enough. You know, airline, Caribbean, going to space, never be enough to make him feel okay. Maybe. And this guy, oh no, he's over here somewhere. See, because that's what society sees. That's what that society out there sees. They're not in their bodies. They look out there to see, how you doing? Well, I just won the lottery. I didn't play the lottery. I'm terrified of winning. Serious. You know, I used to earn lots of bucks and I nearly killed myself. I'm not going there again. So, what society wants is children to be good, right? Really good. Behave yourself. Be good. Obey your teachers. So this comes from a book by Alice Miller. She was a German psychotherapist, psychoanalyst, who started coming out with this stuff, and her contemporaries really shunned her. How dare you? And she's written quite a few good ones. This one, For Your Own Good. Our guests were mostly priests of every sort. As the years passed, my father's religious fervor increased. Whenever time permitted, he would take me on pilgrimages to all the holy places in our own country, as well as Einsiedeln in Switzerland and to Lourdes in France. I know a few people who've been to Lourdes. Where was that? He prayed passionately that the grace of God might be bestowed on me, so that I might one day become a priest, blessed by God. I too was as deeply religious as was possible for a boy of my age. And I took my religious duties very seriously. I prayed with true childlike gravity and performed my duties as acolyte with great earnestness. Good kid, huh? I had been brought up by my parents to be respectful and obedient towards all adults, and especially to the elderly, regardless of their social status. I was taught that my highest duty was to help those in need. It was constantly impressed upon me in forceful terms that I must obey promptly the wishes and commands of my parents, teachers, and priests. And indeed, all adults, including servants, and nothing must distract me from this duty. Whatever they said was always right. These basic principles by which I was brought up became second nature to me. I mean, who wouldn't want a kid like that, huh? Really? That's the self-writings of Rudolf Hess. Put 387,000 people to death in Auschwitz because he was a good person. He obeyed the rules. Codependency is a dreadful disorder. Dreadful disorder. I hope you've got something from this. I've done this presentation in quite a few agencies and various services, mainly with people who are working with clients. But it just felt, why don't we do it for anyone to come to? And we have a men's group that meets here. And I asked the guys and they said, yeah, go for it. So that's how this came about. So I hope you got something from it. And it was good to see you. We now have some questions if you have any, and I'll do my best to try and answer them. If it's causing you discomfort, I would highly recommend you go and see someone to deal with it, to find out what's underneath it. But lying as an addiction, I could go on about defects of character and shortcomings. You know, I hate that term, defects of character, because I'm not defective. Hey, I'm still here. But I define shortcomings. Shortcomings is what I learnt that was put into my hard drive at a very early age. I saw what's going on around me. was put in there as an operating system. So if my father was belting me and my mother was telling me he really loved me, my mother was lying. So I learned to lie, and it's quite okay to lie until I start getting into trouble by lying. Or on the other side is I learned to lie because I had a 50% chance of not getting punished. Smart kid. And it worked, huh? I only got punished for 50%. But defects of character are those patterns I learnt in childhood that I took with me into adulthood. Now, they worked in childhood, but now I'm going into, as an adult, a relationship with somebody I want to be with, and I'm still using those patterns. I'm lying, hoping to get away with 50% of it. And I'm not knowing I'm doing it because it's normal. Toxic shame that I heard you just speak about now is when I get found out for lying. That's not guilt. Because guilt, I know I've done it, and I can say sorry and repair it. Shame is, oh, you found out what a creep I am. Do you know that at times I could physically attack people trying to touch my shame? Huh? It's a really painful thing. Do you know, I hear a lot of words bandied about in recovery. I wish I could be intimate. I'm not talking about sex. Huh? I wish I could be intimate. It was one of the latest fashionable words in recovery. Intimate is just letting you see me with all my flaws. Huh? That's what intimate. I don't have to worry about anything. My buddies here see me as I am, and they say things and laugh with me about me. It doesn't bother me. However, if my ex-wife had to say something, I'll poke her eyes out because she's trying to shame me. See, I didn't know. Emotionally, I'd married my mother. All right. And one of the hardest things to deal with, if I married my mother, you know who she married? Her flippin' father. Oh. Really hard stuff. Anybody else?
Can I ask you something?
Sure. I cried for 3.5 years. I just couldn't stop crying. I was in therapy, one-to-one therapy weekly for 3.5 years. I kept doing workshops. I kept running to the States. I found mentors who wouldn't tell me what to do. And slowly I let go of all the people I'd been hanging on to. Because in this one here, I tried to demonstrate, it's not only my family of origin. Eh? This is my work system. It's my recovery system. In recovery, everything, hey, we're all in recovery together. Step out of line, Peter. Go and do some codependency work. You know what happens with all my recovery support group? Not criticizing them, eh? So it's really painful, scary, lonely. One of the major things I had to do was promise myself I wouldn't kill myself just for today, for many days. It's very scary. I closed my businesses. I had a few in 1994. I went and trained with Jerry Moe, and then I was convinced I was going to come back here and have this treatment facility for children in various facilities. I did presentations at 5 facilities, and they were all like, hey, great. Well, none of them would go with it. Came September, what am I going to do? I don't know. people say, well, go back into your old business. If that worked, I wouldn't be here now. So what are you going to do? And it was, I don't know, have you ever heard any tapes by Bob Earl? Bob Earl? Bob Earl is probably one of the most listened to speakers in AA. He's a mentor. He's still alive, but he was a very, very close mentor of mine at that time. And one of his sayings was, when you hit walls, Peter, turn left. I said, what do you mean? He said, if you keep trying to go in that direction, you're going to hurt yourself. Turn left. He was talking about emotionally. Yeah? Oh, okay. But then I'll hit a wall again. Turn left again. And then he said, I assure you that when you get to the door you meant to go through, it will open for you. The door that opened for me, who was told what a stupid kid he was and would never be anything, was higher education. And the way I describe it in my writings was, do you know in airports, those moving runways, when I put my, emotionally I'm talking about, I felt like I was being picked up and carried, and I can remember the anxiety. I remember speaking to Bob, Bob, I don't know what's going on. His words are very vivid. He said, Peter, it sounds like you found the door you meant to go through, but it's meant to be scary. And it sounds to me like you're holding onto the door frame and the door's closing on your fingers. Let go. I ended up here at university in Scotland. How did I get here? Huh? How did I get here? I didn't know a soul in Scotland. Huh? Not a soul. Amazing. And if you had told me I'd be doing this work here, I was told that. When my first essay at university as an undergraduate, I knew they'd ask me to leave afterwards. After I handed it in, I got the highest mark. Do you know how painful that was? I couldn't stop crying. I got a first for my first essay. From then it was downwards, but hey. Yeah. So, it was very scary. I don't know, do you know about the inner child?
Yeah.
Okay. You've got a little diagram there of how the little one is constricted by all the family rules and all that stuff. I went on a workshop called the Freedom Weekend by a priest by the name of Father Jack McGuinness, who was 17 years sober and suicidal. And he ended up doing survivors program at the Meadows in Wickenburg, just outside Phoenix. And that's where he met his inner child. I met my inner child on his weekend. He did a meditation on the Sunday. Yep. And I found little Pete, and we were walking in a plowed field, and little Pete, me as a little kid, was walking bare-topped, khaki shorts and barefoot. And the feeling was just incredible. Wow. And suddenly a big black cloud came over, and I became hysterical. I had to leave the workshop. And that was on the Sunday. On the Tuesday, I had my appointment with a therapist I was seeing. And I told him what had happened. And he looked at me and he said, Peter, we're going to have to find out what's in the cloud. It took about 3 months, weekly, just touching it, running away, touching it and running away, touching it and running away. That was the terror I lived in as a child. And after the 3 months, little Pete was out. And that's when the chaos started. The adult child. Another good friend of mine, Bob Subby, he's got some really good books. He says, the kid comes out and the kid wants to drive the bus. And because I was terrified to do anything to stop him driving the bus, because he might disappear again, havoc. You know what happens when kids drive buses, eh? Havoc. I regret nothing at this stage, but it was chaos at that time. And then the adolescent came out. I had dreadlocks down to my waist, big bushy beard, to everybody, and I'm in my 50s. Crazy, crazy stuff. But I don't regret any of it. Huh? It's been quite a fun journey. Huh? 9 years after I left my marriage, huh? Was it 9 years, 91? Yes. And I'm the spiritual guru, I'm helping people, I'm okay with myself. I've been flying over to the States and doing these road trips, and now I'm ready for a relationship. And I meet this teaching fellow at the university, and I'm looking for a sexy friend. Date and sleep over, and that's how it started. And we share a bit, and then she has to leave where she's living. She can't afford to keep it. And I have a 2-bedroom flat. And she says, can my daughter and I move in with you? And I open my mouth to say no. Out comes yes. This guru. 6 years later, I left, bleeding emotionally from every orifice. I just couldn't take it anymore, which was an improvement on the marriage I was in for 24 years. So I am getting better. Okay. So I could suggest that if you make an appointment, you find a therapist, ask them about them, what work they've done on themselves. If they don't want to answer you, or they're a bit confused while you're asking, they're not the people to take you on this journey. I'll tell you about the first experience I had. When I went to get help, the people who would see me, providing I came to see them for an assessment with my ex-wife. Like, why would, I'm the one who's got the problem, it's not my ex-wife. I didn't know anything about codependency or anything. So we go for this assessment, and that whole hour I couldn't stop crying because all these feelings were coming up. So she recommends that I see one of the male therapists in the practice weekly, and my ex-wife sees one of the female therapists in the practice weekly, and we see her for our relationship. And I don't know, okay, I'll do anything. I know there's something wrong. I just want to get well. So pretty early on, it was a Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, we were in for our relationship one, and I am raging at my ex-wife. And I'm cursing, I'm saying, you fucking allowed your, it's being filmed, I have to be careful. You effing allowed your effing family to effing abuse me. And they did, incidentally, but I didn't know at that stage that I'd let them, because that's what I was used to. And this dreadful therapist, I hate her to death, she said to me, Peter, you just married your mother. And it was like kicking me in the stomach, I got winded. It shut me up, but the whole day, I was my mother's favorite. If I married my mother, and this person I married allowed her family to abuse me, what did my mother allow? The whole day, at 7 o'clock that evening, I had my one-to-one. And I walked in, and his name was Bruce. And I said to him, Bruce, the strangest thing happened. And it was like a curtain dropped. And there, I can see it now as I tell you this. There's my dad. There's a 5-year-old wee lad. And there's my mom. And my dad's laying into this 5-year-old. The noises that came out of me, the wailing, the snotting, I thought I was going to die. See, I'd had that memory before, but I'd never had the feelings attached to it. They just came out. I ended up like on the floor in fetal position, sobbing and wailing. And then I started to get embarrassed, I've lost control. And I looked up, and Bruce was crying. He knew what I was going through. He'd been through his. I tell you that because if somebody's going to take me on my journey, they need to have been on theirs. Do you know how many people I went to see to get help from who'd learnt it in a book? Okay, we'll prescribe you something. And it's a minefield. You know, I've seen quite a few people, some helped, some didn't. But there are people out there. Narcissism is not codependency. Okay? A narcissist is somebody who was probably unnurtured in childhood and is looking outside all the time. And it's always about them. But they kid it. They have this ability to say it's always about somebody else. But it's another subject completely. What I want to get across to you at this little presentation and talk is I'm not an alcoholic or a drug addict or food addict or a workaholic. I'm a codependent. The illness I suffer from is codependency. All the other things are symptoms of that inner lostness. Now, you mentioned fear of abandonment in your little diagram. There's fear of abandonment at the bottom. As children, if we had have been abandoned, we would have died. Reality, we needed people to take care of us. If they didn't do it enough to satisfy us, we will continue to look for it. The only way to heal that is to grieve that loss, because it's a big loss. I'm not going to be able to grieve it if I'm using substances to keep me away from the grief. There comes a time when the real me starts to appear, is when I've done the grieving. And one of the guys who helped me on this abandonment issue is a guy by the name of John Lee. He's got lots of books too, and he runs lots of workshops and things. He said, Peter, you've got your own income, you've got your own home, you've got the key to the front door, you can cook and take care of yourself. You can't be abandoned. So that feeling you have is from childhood. Absolutely. That you're bringing into the present. It's underneath. If I had been abandoned as a child, I would have died. But if I'm still having those fears as an adult, I'm carrying it from the childhood. Need some professional help. Guys, we're going to have to start closing up. But I hope you all got something from it. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you. Good stuff. Okay.